Hearty shalom to all of you. Jeffrey Seif here, coming to you. Thank you for tuning in to the Tree of Life. I am, in effect, going to give a devotional with this segment out of Acts chapter 18, verse 2. It's a bit of a digression. Usually I push forward through Acts rather than go back a segment and land on it. But speaking of going back and landing, I am from Pennsylvania originally, and my son Jacob and I were just in Pittsburgh. We were there in the aftermath of the horrific murder of Jews in the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh. I lived for a season in Pittsburgh, though I fare from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania originally, and from my time in Pittsburgh, I do know that Squirrel Hill has a very, very pronounced Jewish population, all of whom are grieving right now, given the slaughter there. I went there not as a chaplain. I had business to attend to while there with my son, and we just blew in the immediate aftermath of this horrible tragedy, and I'm going to use this moment to speak to that a little. I want to borrow from language in Acts chapter 18, verse 2, wherein Luke informed that when Paul had made his way to Corinth, he went there and met Aquila and Priscilla there, who were there because Claudius had commanded all the Jews to leave Rome just prior, and they left along with hundreds of thousands of others. I mention that here to remind you now that anti-Semitism isn't just a problem in the here and now. It belonged to yesterday as well. Speaking of yesterday, I'm coming to you in 2018. The stats are out on 2017, according to the Anti-Defamation League, which is in effect a watchdog agency in the Jewish world that looks at hate groups, not just hate groups against Jews, but just hate groups, period. And they reported that in 2017, there were just shy of 2,000 specific anti-Semitic acts that were noted, not sentiments. If we're looking at anti-Semitic sentiments, there's way more. But ideas have a way of making their way into action, and just shy of 2,000. And that is, according to them, a 57% bump over anti-Semitic incidents in 2016. Earlier this year, in 2018, I was in Jerusalem with my wife when the embassy opened up in Jerusalem, the United States Embassy. And I remember she and I, with maybe 50 or 75 others, were invited to a special at TBN. Trinity Broadcasting Network had a special event there, and the ambassador from the United States to Israel was the speaker. And what was interesting is it was an outdoor event overlooking Jerusalem, and belligerents had right next to the studio placed speakers there where when we were filming, when they were filming, I was in the crowd, I wasn't part of the production, but I was just there as part of the crowd. And the name of the game was to drown out the production by piping in loud Islamic rhetoric to drown it out in Arabic. It was rather interesting and rather indicative of a disdain, whether it's words or bullets. Certainly, bullets are more devastating than words, but words translate into bullets. We know that when this sickened individual killed Jews in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he was spouting out this anti-Semitic jargon about the Jews taking over the world, a nasty lot, etc. And that's the same kind of thing that's at play, not today, but yesterday, in the removal of hundreds of thousands of people, if you can imagine that, people that were dispossessed out of Rome. Jews had a history in Rome for quite some time, but the emperor just thought it best for the Jews to get out of Dodge. When Paul wrote the letter to the Romans, he wrote at a time when there was a new emperor in town, Nero, who afforded Israelites the opportunity to return back to Rome, and they did. And that's why when Paul wrote the Romans correspondence at the tail end, he greets Aquila and Priscilla again because they're back. This vacillation, this back and forth, this in and out is so much the story of the Jewish people. Paul wasn't a refugee going in and out. He was just going out. That is to say, he had a mission to preach the gospel in worlds unknown. And he, the apostle to the Gentiles, always frequented Jewish synagogues as he went and brought the word of life. It's interesting, by the way, that Jews have always referred to the word of life, the Torah, as the tree of life, which is why this particular rendition of the text, we go with Etz Chaim, or tree of life. It's a common name. It is the common way that the Torah is designated in the synagogue. It's a common name for synagogues, one that was made the more apparent recently given the tragedy that struck the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was there, as I'd said then, and I was pleased to see the Pittsburgh community rally behind the Jews, to want to stand behind the Jewish people. I just add an appendage to that in standing behind the Jews. Similarly, I'm very much interested in standing behind the law enforcement personnel. Someone went into that synagogue to kill Jews, but there were police that went into the synagogue after him. They didn't let a lot of grass grow under their feet. And at risk to their own persons, they looked to take him out, and did. Not before a number of them were shot in the process, because they did what they needed to do. To me, it's interesting, not only in our culture, of individuals minded to marginalize Jews, but similarly those that are peacekeepers that want to step into the fray. Most people are smart enough to run from bullets. Some run toward it, and those are the men and women in blue, and I'm pleased to support them because, among other things, I am them. Speaking of support, and to bring closure to my point here, I am so very appreciative of you, and I'm speaking for all those that are Tree of Life. It's a Bible society, it's a translation. All of us that want to bring the word of life. And now I want to encourage you to bring consolation and gestures of loving kindness toward the Jew and to those who back the blue, but will focus here on Jewish people. By all means, please continue your endeavors to be kindly disposed. I want to thank you personally on behalf of the Tree of Life Society for your support for us as we endeavor to bring the word of life to our Jewish friends, many of whom, all of whom now are grieving in the aftermath of this horrible tragedy. Many of whom are particularly appreciative of the kindness that you show. Let me just thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.